Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What is your best and that's why I had to fire the Guytail managers, part 4. Overall incompetence at the greatest degree. In my current hotel, I typically handle the majority of the hiring, but one day, the GM decided to hire me a new employee because I was preoccupied with other work. She arranges for the new hire to begin training the following day. When I hear that she has years of prior experience working at another hotel, I start to get hopeful that she might already be skilled and won't need much training. I am greeted by a woman who appears to be about 45 years old and has a strange expression in her eye right away when she arrives for training. She was hired to work the front desk, but I quickly find out that her prior years of experience at another hotel were actually spent as a housekeeper. I give her a time card because we have an electric time clock that prints the date and time on the card when it's placed underneath it. She glances at the card right away and notes that the dates on the punch card for the 2-week period do not match the dates on the current pay period. Although I initially appreciate her observation, I quickly tell her that it's irrelevant because the stamp prints the accurate date and time onto the card, so it makes no difference where she stamped it. This seemed to send her into a never-ending state of confusion. She said, "No, this isn't right. I can't use this card. How will I know I'm not being scammed?" after staring blankly for a few minutes. I'm at a loss for words, so all I can do is try to reassure her that this is all perfectly normal, show her everyone else's punch card to confirm it's the same, and try to reiterate why there's nothing to worry about. She then asks the same questions over and over for at least 10 minutes on how to use the punch card. I'm not kidding. In which direction should I place it? How quickly should I insert it? What if it throws 2 punches? Should it punch the incorrect date? If the time punches in the wrong direction rather than the right, what should I do? Why are the lines printed in a different color on the back of the card than the front? And on it goes. I was about to call the general manager at this point to inform her that her hiring this woman was a huge mistake. However, things improved. The second step is to have her fill out a W-4 form, sign the necessary hiring documents, and obtain a photocopy of her social security card and driver's license after we finally got her punched in. After filling out all the paperwork, she won't give it to me when I go to get it from her. She says she's bringing everything home to keep a record of it. I give her a confused look and gently explain that we need the paperwork for our records in order to hire her. She claimed that it was unsafe for her to give us her personal information and that if she did, she would need many extra copies for her own safety. It seemed that she was unable to understand this. After I just briefly explained about the time clock to my boss over the phone, she advised me to tell her straight away that it would not work out and to send her home. While she waited for her ride to pick her up and transport her home in our lobby, I saw her trying to get a coffee from our coffee shop. After inexplicably spilling hot water all over her arm, she pulled the hot water dispenser handle and inquired as to why it was clear. She left after I told her it was just hot water and that the coffee was already made and in the big containers. You press a button on top of these sizable containers to release the coffee into a cup using a nozzle while it's still warm. She picked the entire dispenser up and turned it upside down over her cup, then said, "It's broken," because nothing came out. Just incredible. It was my job to keep a factory safe. Along with checking visitors in, watching the cameras, and putting out real fires, we would also walk people out who had been terminated. One day around 6 a.m., one of the shop supervisors calls to tell us that they're firing someone. That's why my boss and I drove over to where they used to work and meet with the supervisor to find out who the guy is, why he's being fired, etc. It turns out that this guy is being fired for a number of quality, safety, and attendance issues. My boss, the shop supervisor, and I go to the guy's workbench and look at the piece he's working on. I really don't think that guy had any idea what he was doing because there's scorch marks and holes all over the place. As we were leaving, he turned to me and said, "Man, you guys are so nice about this. This is so much better than when they kicked me out of the army." I do not have the authority to fire them, but I do have a supervisory role, and this individual deserved to be fired. In short, I'm a systems administrator. He wasn't willing to do anything, so he slacked off and walked around without shoes on. This is an office, so there's no strict dress code, but still, he was a total jerk. We talked about what he should do because I knew he was just watching YouTube videos all day. After 20 minutes, I checked on him and found that he hadn't started. I told him again to do the same thing. I knew he didn't want to, but I didn't care as long as it got done. I stayed calm and collected because I didn't want to give him anything to use against me. After 20 minutes, there was still nothing. When I asked him a third time, he blew his fart at me, yelled, and cursed. It was my lunch break, so I went for a walk to cool off and then called my boss. After hearing my side of the story, my boss promised to find out the other guy's side. He works in a different office, so he had to call this guy. The guy wouldn't talk to him about it. He would only talk to our director. She was at a meeting all day and then came back to the office to take care of this. At the same time, our CTO hears what happened and decides on his own to send him home for the day before my director gets there. This is when I'll be back from lunch. Then another manager at our place of business calls this guy into a room and tells him this. He leaves the building and goes to his desk to get his things, which was a smart move since he was never allowed back in. Then he decides to confront me again, this time saying things like, "I'd better watch out." When he says, "I'm not going to lose my job over this," I try not to laugh while I sit there in silence. When my director gets here, she and I sit down with the manager who helped him leave. He told the manager that he calmed him down and that he knows he was wrong. I told my boss that she had the power to fire him or not, and if she chose not to, I would keep working with him. It was Wednesday, 2 days before I left for a 2-week vacation, something I forgot to say. I was on my way to the elevator to go home on Friday when my boss stopped me to tell me that she had let him go. When she called him the night before, he hadn't taken responsibility for what he did, and she also said that I played down what had happened more than the other 20 or so people she talked to about it. That I didn't make things worse or give her a either-or choice was also something she praised. This guy was secretly seeing another coworker who lived halfway around the world and worked at a different office. In fact, he had gone to see her and her family 2 weeks before this. My boss told me this after the fact. She was worried about what would happen if he showed up to a Christmas party or something because they were going to get married and his fiancée was going to move here and apply for a job at our office. As we talked about how strange the situation was and how bad of a person his fiancée seemed to be, I told her I wasn't scared of this jerk. All of this has not been brought up by his fiancée, who is now his wife, but still working from her old office. She's also a supervisor at her job, and she asks me questions and seeks my advice all the time. Even though I like her, I don't want to work things out with this guy, especially when it comes to feelings. My boss told me that they got married not long ago, and he still doesn't have a job after this one, which was almost a year ago. What is the most exciting, crazy story you have about your HOA or neighbors? Part 4. Luckily, I was about to locate a decent house in a homeowners association. Regretfully, a minimum of 1 Karen is necessary for every HOA. I became a member of the HOA board for my townhome neighborhood last year. I was eager to finally be involved in decisions made in my community. I've discovered quickly that very few people take the time to research their homeowners association before purchasing a property. As a result, I constantly witness situations in which individuals are unaware of the guidelines they have decided to follow. Now, when someone behaves responsibly and makes the proper request to the HOA, it surprises me. A responsible homeowner requested permission 2 months ago to build a small patio on the grass in front of his house. In our neighborhood, landscaping like this is typical. He's allowed to add the patios as long as it's the same as the others in the community according to our rules. Naturally, we granted this request. Karen now walks into our neighborhood. Next to this conscientious homeowner lives Karen. The installation of the patio started on Monday. Karen and the homeowner's contractor got into a verbal fight. She insisted on seeing construction plans and official approval for all of it. It was told to Karen to keep quiet. She then believed that it was her duty as Karen to call the emergency line of our HOA management company. She gave the office staff a hard time for never contacting her via phone or email to request permission to begin construction or to let her know that it had been approved. Since the area was reasonably close to her house, she believed that she had an equal claim to it as her neighbor. In addition, she insisted repeatedly, without providing any specifics, that there were numerous other HOA violations. Karen was given the mobile number of the property manager so she could leave a message. It seems that Karen left a voicemail that raised enough red flags for the property manager to call me immediately. She pleaded with me to go to the neighbor who was in charge, snap some photos, and check to see if there was anything strange about the construction work. She was concerned that the patio might not have the same appearance as the others in the community. I then loaded up my toddler into her stroller and went for a stroll down that path. It was all very normal, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing went wrong. There was no construction going on close to Karen's land. Why Karen would think she has any claim to the space on the other side of the neighbor's house from her puzzled me. I found out a few hours ago that Karen doesn't even own the property next to the neighbor who's responsible. She is the actual homeowner's sister. I found out about this because the actual homeowner used our resident portal online to message the HOA. She claimed to have read her homeowner documents and to be embarrassed by her sister's actions. She also thought the HOA had handled the situation quite well. My neighbor. There are also HOAs in our neighborhood, but they mostly do nothing. So that peckerhead would hire men to drag down trees into our wooded property for 15 years. You're on private property, so stop that, I would say. When I told him not to do that, Peckerhead would come over and claim he understood. It would eventually cease, but not for very long. I went to the zoning board meeting after he told me he didn't want to move but wanted a larger yard, and I told him he couldn't have mine. He wanted to add on to his house and needed a variance. That ought to have worked then, right? We were the only neighbors who would be impacted, and nobody had spoken to us about it, I said, especially after he claimed in front of the zoning board that he had spoken to every neighbor and that everyone was in favor of his addition. But things went on, and I spoke with him several more times until I saw a tree guy 50 feet up in one of my trees in February of this year without the right equipment. I snapped and told his tree crew to quit. Peckerhead arrived, and we told him that they had chopped down our trees and that no one had ever asked us if his men were allowed to be doing that on our land. He insisted that since he had been claiming ownership of it for so long, it was not our property. I so called the police and requested that an officer be dispatched to document our grievance. He spoke with Peckerhead and me. I called the building permit secretary at the town, and she dispatched code enforcement. Code enforcement informed Peckerhead that his shed was partially on our property, along with 3 feet of his driveway and a variety of items they had planted after he had eluded the CE officer for 6 weeks. When the surveyor came out to permanently stake the property line, Miss Peckerhead covered every stake so that no one could see it. My husband made Peckerhead walk the 300 feet of property line with him and instructed him to remove everything over the line, as well as his driveway extension, giant pile of dirt, concrete slabs and chunks, piles of rocks from his swimming pool construction, pipes from his radiators when they had done work on the house. You get the picture. Sure, I'll do whatever I have to do, Peckerhead said, and did not a single thing. My husband promised that the next time this happened, we would build a beautiful beautiful black chain link fence that Peckerhead would look at every day and we would never see. Anyway, we called a lawyer after Peckerhead decided to call my husband's bluff. I wrote the letter at 3 a.m, sent it to the lawyer, and instructed him to clean it up and send it out. The attorney peppered the letter with statements like wetland dumping equals $10,000 a day fine, and NYS is a treble damage state, so if they sue, you're looking at paying 3 times the value of the mature trees he cut down, because that property Peckerhead was attempting to seize was wetlands. We also had an arborist look over the stumps because Peckerhead claimed he had them removed because they were dead, but the arborist said they were in good health when they were removed. Basically, the lawyer's letter and code enforcement worked. My neighbor may finally believe now. At least he is aware now that we intend to bring it to them. He also has a conflict on the other side because he built his pool without a permit and against the other property line, which they find objectionable because he's closer to them than they are. On this side, there's about an acre of land separating us from them. If you want to watch the part 3, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.